Hello, I'm Arthur Melman, your host for tonight's debate among the candidates for the mayor of East Hampton. Our debate tonight is brought to you by the East Hampton Group for Good Government, a nonpartisan citizens group which has been in East Hampton for about a decade now and focuses on issues of importance to residents of the town of East Hampton, its villages, its schools, and so forth. Tonight, we have with us the three candidates for mayor, and I'll introduce them now. Barbara Borsak, Jerry Larson, and Arthur, I guess Tiger Graham is the way most people know him. So since I'm Arthur and he's Arthur, I'll call him Tiger and he can call me any name he wants. In any event, we hope that many of you have downloaded this debate brochure, which I've already marked up, which gives a lot of information about our debate procedures, how you vote, and how you get absentee ballots, and also statements by the candidates. There's one change that I was told about in the procedures in the brochure regarding absentee ballots. Absentee ballots, as everybody knows, is a big topic now. And in the brochure, it says that the village clerk will be mailing them September 9th. And apparently that's changed very beneficially for everybody in that the village clerk will be mailing those absentee ballots as soon as they come in from the printer. So that may be any day or the next week or so. The idea is to give the post office as much chance as possible to get the absentee ballots into your hands, and you send back, of course, as quickly as possible, the ballot. You have a cutoff date to apply by mail for the absentee ballot. The application is also on the website, and the notice that was sent out by the GGG to its members. And once again, we strongly suggest that you send in the application for the absentee ballot as soon as possible. And as a practical matter, since it's pretty easy to park near the village office, you could just bring the request in and they can process it on the spot. But just in broadest terms, in order to vote in the village election, you must be registered with the Suffolk County Board of Elections, and you must be a resident of the village of East Hampton. What we found from time to time is some people were not sure if they're residents of East Hampton Village, but it's only residents who can vote. But as a practical matter, I'm sure tonight, there'll be lots of people who are not residents of East Hampton, but for whom the village of East Hampton is the center of their local social life, their cultural life, their commercial life. So hopefully some of the things that the mayoral candidates are talking about tonight will have relevance for people beyond those people who happen to be residents of the town, of the village of East Hampton. In this brochure, we have not only, as I said, voting procedures, which I just got into, but quick overview of the debate procedures. They're ones we've used for many of our debates before, although I'll admit we've never done it for Zoom, so it may not work as easily for Zoom as it does for our in-person debates. The quick overview is each of the candidates will have 1 minute to introduce themselves, tell you about their background, what their major views are, and then we'll go to our question period, which is the heart of the debate. And we have it set up. We have changed from what's in the brochure. The brochure said that each candidate would have up to a minute. Instead, they're going to have up to 2 minutes. We have fewer candidates than our usual, 5 or 6. And also, the reality is nobody's quite sure how easily Zoom works, and you obviously can't see the audience. So it may be harder to answer questions in this format. However, every candidate is more than welcome, if they're not the first person to answer a question, to simply pipe up and say, I agree with the former answer. I mean, we'll love you for that, believe me. But that will get us to the point where we could get more questions answered. And again, please don't take more than you need, because if you don't use the full 2 minutes, we're all more than happy to move on to be able to answer more of the questions. I'll hold up this high-tech sign when you have 10 seconds left, but we're not going to cut off your video or your audio. I think we're a little bit beyond that, hopefully. But please do try to wind up your presentation. Also, at the end, we're going to have 1 minute for each candidate to sum up their thoughts for the evening. One thing about the questions, by the way, there are 4 questions in the brochure which have been shared in advance with many of our audience members and also with the candidates. Our first Zoom debate was supposed to be in May, so the candidates have had 3 or 4 months to think of the answer. So that shouldn't be a problem. It won't catch them by surprise. However, after we get beyond our first 4 questions, nobody has seen any of the questions. The first 4 are a little long because they were written out, and we had hoped that they could be shown on the screen, but technology isn't what we hoped. So I'll just try to read them a little slower than normal because they are a little complex, because we haven't got the ability to show it on the screen. It may be hard to follow. Very important part of the brochure is the last part, which is a 2-page summary written by each of the candidates. And I want to stress that the GGG has not edited. If there's a typo, it's not ours. It's theirs. It's what they want to tell you in their own words. And now, I think without really much fanfare, I'd like to get started. And going in alphabetical order, Barbara, could you take a minute and tell us about Barbara Borsak?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you so much, Arthur. Just as briefly as I can, I want to tell everyone that I've spent my entire life in the village. I raised my family here, and I've been a big part of the village life. I believe that it's our civic responsibility as citizens to give back to the community, and I've worked very hard to do that. I'm the first woman who was ever elected to the village board. I've served as a volunteer member of the ambulance corps for 30 years, and I served also as its first female elected chief. I've answered over 3,500 ambulance calls in the community. I've also served on the board of the East Hampton Historical Society and the East Hampton Healthcare Foundation and Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. Right now, I'm serving on the committee of the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital to build the 24/7 emergency facility right here in East Hampton, and I'm very excited about that particular thing right now. Given that 90% of our village is residential homes and neighborhoods, as your next mayor, I would be committed to continuing to serve and protect the quality of life that all of our residents share in the village. I will work hard to protect the environment and to ensure that residents play an important role in shaping the thoughtful evolution of the village that we all love, along with the businesses that make for a lively and prosperous commercial core.
Thank you, Barbara. Arthur, I guess alphabetically you're next. Or
Okay.
I'll call you Tiger. I keep on forgetting it.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. I won't call you Lion, though.
Okay. Call me anything you want. I've had 3 daughters and 5 granddaughters. I won't even tell you some of the things I've been called.
I'm sure you've heard it all.
You got it.
Good evening, and thanks to the GGG for hosting this debate. I have had a 30-plus year career in finance. I've managed a national sales force, which is akin to herding cats, and I've managed bond trading operations. My management experience has informed the way that I work with people, collaboratively setting policies so that people buy into the task at hand. I've served on the village board for 3 years, and during that time, we brought forth important initiatives like a wastewater treatment plan and a revitalization plan for Herrick Park. I took the lead on restricting leaf blowers during the summer months to keep our neighborhoods peaceful, and I look forward to working with the board and the village on issues important to our residents. Your choice for mayor is important. I believe that my career management experience, coupled with the successes I have had leading both the East Hampton Historical Society as president and the Thomas Moran Trust as chairman, all set the table for me to govern the village in a professional and respectful manner. Thank you.
Jerry, I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute.
I'm good. Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and Tiger and Barbara. Good evening. Thanks to the GGG for sponsoring this event. My name is Jerry Larson. I'm a candidate for East Hampton Village Mayor. I'm a lifelong resident of East Hampton, growing up on Buell Lane. I'm married to Lisa Mulhern Larson, and together we've raised 6 children in this wonderful community. I retired in 2016 from the East Hampton Village Police Department after a 34-year career, the last 14 years as chief of police. In my capacity as chief, I was also in charge of emergency management for the village, the town-wide 911 center, and the paid paramedic program. I am currently the director of security for McAndrews and Forbes, and I own my own security company. I am very proud to say that my wife and I started our business in 2005, and today it has grown into a very successful family-run business. I am also very proud to announce that I have been endorsed by the East Hampton Village Police Department's Police Benevolent Association, and I'm very happy and proud of those fine men and women. Thank you, and ready to go.
Okay, let me go into the first question, and I stress that this question everybody's had a chance to think about, along with the following 3. I'll read them now, and I'm sorry we couldn't put it on the screen. Almost everybody agrees that the village should build a neighborhood sewer system to cover Main Street and Newtown Lane and some adjoining areas. This would reduce pollution from private septic systems and could allow more dense, affordable housing, more apartments on the 2nd floor of commercial buildings, and possibly expansion of restaurants. However, water treatment plants are always a problem. Let's assume that the first choice is a parcel acquired by the village just outside the northern end of the village. As soon as the plan is made public, the nearby homeowners and businesses who are not in the village but are close to the proposed site scream that the Vancy Village is dumping its sewage in their neighborhood. What would you do? Barbara, you can go first.
Okay, well, I certainly think that it is up to the village government to work on this carefully. First of all, we need to find an industrial area that's appropriate for such a use, and then it's up to us to work with any neighbors that are around. I can't divulge some of the places that we've been looking for, but I think that we're looking at places that I think will be perfect for this kind of use. But we need to work with the neighbors. I mean, that's our job, is to work with any neighbors and make sure that, modern plants are not the way they were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. There's much less odor. In fact, if they're well run, there shouldn't be any odor at all. So I don't think that's going to be an issue, but it's up to us to run them properly, run the plant properly, and it's up to us to find the proper location where it's not going to be a problem.
Thank you, Barbara. Tiger?
Sure. The wastewater treatment proposal has 2 major benefits. First is the obvious and immediate ecological benefit of protecting the groundwater and our ponds from pollution. The importance of this cannot be overstated. The system would also enable new restaurants and food stores to open. Restaurants are recognized as anchor businesses, and the foot traffic they generate feeds customers to all the other businesses in the area. Stores may then extend their hours to capture more of that traffic, and in time, many may choose to stay open year-round. It will not happen overnight, but it's an important cornerstone to rebuilding the vitality, fun, and sense of community in the village. Once a site has been identified, there will be challenges. One has to look no farther than Sag Harbor to see that it can be done. Their system was installed in the 1970s, and I bet most people have no idea where it is. It's right in the middle of the village. Technology has come a long way since then, and I have every confidence we can get this done, working closely with the community and being sensitive to their concerns. We owe this project to future generations of East Hampton.
Thank you, Tiger. Jerry?
Yes, thank you. So the septic system, the sewer treatment plant is crucial for the wet uses for our village. Also, the cleanliness of our ponds. And there was a study done by the village back in 2015. Actually, it was done by the town, and it was called the Townwide Wastewater Management Plan. And they've identified locations within our village. And this was, like I said, this was done back in 2015. Am I muted? I can't hear you, Arthur. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, I was just.
Sorry. So I couldn't tell if you could hear me or not. So
No,
back in 2015, this plan was developed and they've identified places in the village, but the village board has not advanced any of this in 4 years. And nothing has been done until we started talking about it when we started our campaign in 2019 in April. So instead of kicking the can down the road, we've actually come up with a plan to pay for this sewer system. And moving forward, we're going to jump on this immediately, our team, as soon as we take office.
Arthur, can I just tell Mr. Larson that not only has this not been kicked down the road, that Barbara and I both serve on a committee. We did the study with Pio Lombardo before I was on the board. When I got on the board, one of the first things we started on in 2017 was starting work on this project. We've hired a consultant. We have a plan. It's been drawn out. We have an estimate of the costs. And frankly, for Jerry to say that we've kicked it down the road is insane. We are
Tiger, I know you've gotten worked up about this.
Well, listen, if we're going to have rebuttal back and forth.
Poor Jerry is got to have a chance to respond.
If we're going to have rebuttal, then I guess I get to rebut his rebuttal.
I guess you do. We're going to try and keep some semblance. Lori, let me if I count my watch. We're going to try and keep semblance of order.
My point was, Tiger and Arthur and everybody listening, is that the study was done in 2015. You haven't done anything. You hired a consultant in 2019. That is not moving very fast, Tiger. Not in my world.
Okay.
Well, this is the speed of government, which I hope to speed up.
Okay.
Well, so far you haven't, Tiger. So.
Okay. Barbara, do you want to add anything, or are you?
Well, it's absolutely true. We've been working on this all along since 2015 in many ways. These things don't happen overnight. It's not that easy to just throw a sewer system in. So we have definitely been working on this. Tiger and I have both been involved in that work. And, we hope very soon to have something to present to the community.
Okay. Jerry, are you okay now? You've been...
I'm fine.
Okay.
No, that was fine.
Okay, no.
If we're going to have the back and forth, I just want to make sure we all have our say.
Yeah, no, honestly, we hadn't planned on having it, but I would just as soon do it. And, I think if everybody's respectful and tries to keep their answers and their rebuttals and their sewer rebuttals and their sewer rebuttals,
exactly.
That would be more interesting, actually, for everybody watching. The next question, I guess, is for Tiger to start. And this is about hotel overlay districts. The village's hotels and inns are non-conforming uses in residentially zoned areas, which makes it difficult for them to modernize and expand. A proposal has been made to create a special hotel overlay district. By the way, this is all assumptions. It's not necessarily fact, which could bring them into conforming use and encourage septic improvements, but also allow more outdoor dining, music, and special events and tents. Some people have noticed that the proposed district covers not only existing structures, but would also allow expansion onto adjoining presently residential properties, and residents nearby claim that the peace and quiet of their own neighborhoods would be destroyed for the sake of a few business owners. How do you handle it? Tiger?
Well, the century-old inns are an important part of the historic fabric of the village, and I'm looking forward to working with all of the inns to help them find ways to continue to be a dynamic and profitable force in the village. I was not in favor of dismissing the entire inn overlay plan outright when it first came before the board, but a bright line no for me was the proposal to allow the inns to expand their operations into adjoining residentially zoned properties. I made the point at the time that there was some provision that made some sense, like restaurants, small gift shops, spas, yoga classes. But there is yet another line that must be indelibly drawn, and that is the inns must not detract from their residential neighborhood's peace and quiet. Noise from any outdoor events must be mitigated and have an endpoint that will not conflict with their neighbors' quiet enjoyment of their properties. I look forward to solving this issue in conjunction with the entire village community. And any hearings on issues regarding the inns would be held in the evening to provide for substantial public participation. And also, I would say that I'm the chairman of the village's Planning and Zoning Board now, and we are actively discussing this and other things that are before the village at the moment, outdoor displays, et cetera.
Jerry?
Yeah, I'm in favor of an overlay district which would allow the inns to provide services to their clientele, such as a spa, things like that. I'm not in favor of the inns expanding into adjoining properties, but I think that a lot of that has happened over time because this board has been so restrictive and unable and unwilling to help the inns that they started to buy the adjoining properties so that they could survive. And for Tiger to sit here and say that he wants to help, in 2018, he voted for the new assemblage law that basically shut down the outdoor events for these inns. Why didn't we sit down at the table with the inns then and try to help? That's my question, and maybe Tiger can respond to that.
Different administration. The mayor at that time was not interested in doing that, Jerry.
Okay.
And there was no way that those of us on the board could move that forward.
But you couldn't speak up for how you felt?
I made it known
disagree with that.
How I felt. And also, I will say the Planning and Zoning Board did send out a letter to all of the non-conforming properties in the village, saying that we were going to be discussing this at P&Z, and we would love to hear what was on their wish list of what they would want.
But why didn't you vote no, Tiger?
You know what, Jerry? I didn't vote no because it was what we were doing at the time. You know, I'm not going to get in and argue with you on this, but
I'm not arguing. I'm just asking a very simple question. If you're supporting the inns now, why didn't you support them then? It was 2 years ago, Tiger. It wasn't a month. It wasn't 10 years ago. Your mind changed. It was 2 years ago, and people had their weddings planned, and the village board destroyed their weddings.
And you also know, Jerry, that I was the one that made the suggestion that they could move all those events back to the Cumming property behind the inn where they did, and they had those events. We didn't ruin anyone's wedding. I was looking for ways to accommodate the inns even back then.
Who paid for that accommodation, Tiger?
Probably
the village.
Probably the Cumming family did.
Okay, now can we just give poor Barbara a chance? Poor Barbara has sat there. Barbara?
Well, this is an interesting issue, the whole issue of pre-existing non-conforming uses. And I think that the comprehensive plan that was done and accepted in 2002 is pretty definite on this. I am not in agreement that the zoning should be changed. I think the pre-existing non-conforming use gives residents a certain protection. And for me, it's about protecting the residents. I do think there are things that we can allow the inns to do. I think we can allow them to do a certain number of events, but it would be under the special permit law, and they would be allowed to have a certain number of events under special permit. That would allow the village to control the parking and the number of people and the hours and the noise. It's a very dangerous thing to let that special designation of pre-existing non-conforming go. So I think in terms of protecting the residents, I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is, but working with the inns to be able to allow them to do some other things. They also have the ability to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get permission to do certain things. But I have no problem with them doing, having a spa in their basement, or, there's certain things they certainly could do that maybe they're not allowed to do now. And I have no problem with opening that up a little bit.
Okay?
Can I say something, Arthur?
Sure, yeah,
Can I respond to Barbara?
yeah.
Again, Barbara, in 2018, you voted to pass a law that limited or canceled their ability to have events outdoor. And now you're saying you wouldn't be opposed to it by a special permit. That was already the process. The process was they had to apply to the village and get a special permit for their event. That was already the process. And then the village board made a new law which shut that ability down and then refused to even talk about it until election time. It just doesn't make sense. And then not being able to adjust the zoning codes, you're just going to force these inns to buy the adjoining properties, just like Tiger just said. They were able to have their wedding, so the village canceled the weddings. And then they just moved the weddings to a private property behind the inn. That's what's going to happen. You're just going to keep expanding the problem, and you're just going to affect more and more neighbors.
Well, I don't agree with you. What happened in 2018 is not exactly what you're describing. It's not exactly true. So it's too complicated to try to explain at this point what was going on in 2018. It was much more complicated than what you're trying to say. We had to make a decision about upholding a court decision at that time, which is what we did. And immediately we started to talk about ways among ourselves that we could loosen things up for the inns. But, that's much too complicated to go into. So, what you're saying is not exactly true. But, there's a limit to what we can go into at this point. So I express my opinion of what I'm willing to do and how I feel about it. And I think that can stand.
Okay, let's go on to the next question. And this is code enforcement. Residents like me watch the village zoning board meetings on LTV where people face hurdles when they want to add space above a garage for gym equipment or want to have a planter on the edge of wetlands. Meanwhile, we see that someone who did not bother to get a building permit has built several non-conforming structures on her property, greatly exceeding coverage limits or in a wetland setback, hires a lawyer, starts or threatens a lawsuit, and enters into a settlement agreement allowing her to keep at least some of the grossly non-conforming items, an outcome which seems improbable had they followed the rules and applied for a permit in the first place. How would you handle this, Jerry? Jerry, can you start?
No, me first. Okay, good. Well, obviously I've been in law enforcement my whole life. So I'm a follow the rules kind of guy. So I think people should abide by the law. And when people either make mistakes or they intentionally do something, they have to be held accountable. And maybe the penalties need to be increased. I think we should look at the entire zoning code. Again, maybe people are doing this because we haven't looked at the zoning code for years and they're just doing things that they know they could never get permission for. And maybe we should look at those things and see if there is a way to loosen up the code. I don't know. We have to look at that. We should go for severe fines. But I think the thing we should really take advantage of is when people make these mistakes, whether it's intentional or accidental, we should turn the negative into a positive and we should get something out of it, something that could help our water quality. If somebody lives near we make them put in one of the nitrogen reducing systems, and that should be our goal, to turn the negative that has happened into a positive. So it's a positive outcome for our water quality, or whatever the case may be, depending on the situation. But I think that's the way to address things and not always be the hammer.
Barbara?
Well, I sat on the zoning board for 2 terms, so I do know something about the zoning board and the zoning code. And actually, The majority of citizens are law-abiding citizens and they follow the code very carefully. I think sometimes there are mistakes made and sometimes they're honest mistakes. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes people, push the envelope and try to do what they can do. When that happens, I think the zoning board has been very good about doing exactly what Jerry Larson suggested. They do trade-offs. They sometimes allow someone to keep something in place that was put up erroneously or gone over the setback erroneously, but they have to trade off by changing the septic system, and that happens very often. And there have been cases where people have had to remove the building that they put up erroneously. So it's not that they get off and can do whatever they want to do. That's just not true. And I think that I think the zoning board does a good job. I think the zoning board is independent of the village board for good reason. The last thing you want is a mayor doing favors for friends, by letting them get away with things that they shouldn't be getting away with. So the zoning board is independent and they're appointed as an independent board. So they make their decisions. And if they're not doing a good job, then it behooves the mayor to make changes on the zoning board.
Tiger?
Zoning is an important issue in keeping our neighborhoods peaceful, attractive, and livable. I would look very skeptically at any substantial application that is asking for forgiveness rather than permission. Applicants intentionally trying to game the system by building first and seeking a variance second should be rejected outright. The ZBA will decide what they think is appropriate, and if the applicant disagrees, they're free to litigate. That's just the way things seem to be nowadays. Some applications before the ZBA are for small corrective issues, and the ZBA has been able to work with in these situations to most everyone's satisfaction. I would like to see a plan to streamline the variance process for the simplest applications that may not even require the hiring of an attorney. The more complex applications will require more time to process, and there are often many moving pieces that require more analysis by the village, hence longer hearing schedules. But I think also this situation that we find ourselves in where certain applications are being delayed and delayed and delayed and adjourned and adjourned and adjourned. This isn't serving anyone. I think that we need to make quicker judgments on the zoning board. I think that, maybe somebody goes back and says, well, I'll talk to my client and see if we can scale this project back. Okay. And then they come back in a month and say, we've scaled it back. And the ZBA says, okay, or maybe scale it back some more. Nobody is served by these things dragging out forever. So I would like to have a process that stops these things after a certain period of time.
Thank you, Tiger. Barbara, I guess you're the next up on the vision statement. And I apologize because we can't put it up on the screen. We'd hope to, but hopefully people either have a chance to look at it or can probably guess many of the features of it. And the question really is, what changes would you make? And I don't remember how long ago the village decided to focus on its vision statement, but my guess is it was probably, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, Barbara, you might actually know.
Well, the vision statement was actually accepted as part of the comprehensive plan. So that was 2002. So it is time to redo the comprehensive plan, or at least update it. It doesn't have to be done, from square one, but it can be updated. I believe that the vision statement is still very good. I think I agree with a lot of what's in the vision statement, but there are two things that were not even thought of in 2002, and those are the septic issues, the water quality issues that we're dealing with now that we know so much more about now. So I think water quality issues should be included in the new vision statement and the new comprehensive plan. And I also think the short-term rental issue is one that needs to be included in the comprehensive plan when it's redone. Those are two things that right off the top of my head, I would say need to be included in the comprehensive plan if it's redone. And that would be the vision statement, a new vision statement as well.
Tiger?
Yes. The village's vision statement seeks to protect and preserve the character of this village by defining the demarcation between the commercial and residential zones, preserving green open spaces and historic structures, and the continuation of our quality of life. I could not agree more with this statement. However, much has changed in the village since this statement was first drafted in 1926. We have major traffic intersections that are bearing traffic that was not imagined even 20 years ago. This season, Chief Tracy's use of TCOs in the village core makes the traffic flow much better and makes it safer for pedestrians. And we can expand on this program as needed. And along with the increase in traffic has come an increase in demand for parking in the village core. I believe the better management of our existing parking lots can help. We're upgrading from the outdated ticket machines to a license plate reader system that will give us hourly data on where cars are parked and for how long. This system will allow us to add perhaps a third hour of parking for village residents. And I would also consider making the underutilized Osborne Lane parking lot into a daily permit lot where people can purchase a monthly permit. And the other thing that I would say is that the Planning and Zoning Board, Barbara mentioned the short-term rental situation. Barbara and I serve on a committee where we have had contact with a couple of companies that do surveillance on the short-term rental market. And according to the latest report I got from them, we have about 250 active listings for short-term rentals in the village on a little more than 200 parcels. And I think that is a huge strain on the infrastructure of the village.
Jerry?
Yeah, I have to say, I agree with Barbara on the vision statement, and I also agree that the comprehensive plan needs to be updated. The only thing I would add to the vision statement is I would incorporate the second homeowners, and I would embrace tourism and not be afraid of it. And the way that vision statement is presented, it just basically says that tourism is the danger to our village. And I don't see it that way. I see it as we should embrace it and we should and deal with it and not look the other way. So I really don't have much else to say about the vision statement.
Okay. Well, hopefully we won't get too much of a firefight about the vision statement. So let's go on to the next issue. And by the way, these next questions, nobody's had a chance to look at. If they sound strange, it's my fault, but they're at least short. So that has a great benefit. And I guess, Arthur, you're the person, and this really ties into the prior question. And how would you protect our residential neighbors from Airbnb and other short-term rentals?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to define the problem. Last year, a year ago, May, I looked at the short-term stay websites, and I counted 35 houses in the village that were, for rent on Airbnb. Now, this one company that Barbara and I have been talking to has come up with 250 listings on 200 properties. Okay, that's a much bigger problem. And frankly, the village has in its code that houses can be rented no more than twice a year for no less than 2 weeks. So if somebody comes out for an Airbnb for a weekend, that's in violation of our code. Now, that part of the code that has that is in the definitions. And as our attorney says, it's very difficult to prosecute on a definition. But when you have 3 or 4 couples coming out from New York to spend a weekend in East Hampton, and they can't go to Surf Lodge because they're afraid of COVID, they all pile out at the pool and hang out until 2 in the morning, driving their neighbors crazy. I think that we need to enact absolute minimum stays on the short-term rentals, and I think we need to comply with the code. Maybe the code gets tweaked a little bit to allow more than 2 rental periods, but I'm not so sure that a 2-week minimum is not a good idea. We want people to come out here and fall in love with our village.
Jerry?
Yeah, I think we all agree that the short-term rental is a problem. The short-term rentals are a problem for the neighborhoods. The short-term rentals are a problem for our inns. And they're actually, the short-term rentals don't really help our businesses much. During the COVID, my team and I, we set up these Facebook interviews, and we had a lot of real estate agents on, and then they brought a lot of good points to us, which with these short-term rentals, you have someone comes out to rent just for a weekend, and then they invite all their friends to the house because they only have the house for one weekend. So you're really overwhelming our infrastructure, you're overwhelming our village. So, you know, we sit here and we say that it's hard to prosecute. This has been a problem for a long time. And again, we have a village board that just doesn't take action. Why haven't we revised the code already so we can enforce this law? This is the frustrating part for me, to sit here and listen to what they're going to do. They've been in power for 20 years and 3 years, and they haven't brought any of this stuff forward. I will.
I might say, Jerry, that I have brought it forward. It's currently in active discussion at Planning and Zoning, which I was just appointed to. You know, I'm sorry if you are impatient with the pace of change. It's coming, and we're going to manage it.
Okay.
My turn? Yeah, I mean, I agree with almost everything that's been said. I mean, the short-term rentals are a problem, and we've seen this increase in the last few years, which is why it's something that we are talking about very seriously now. 20 years ago, it wasn't a problem. So I think that what's happening is it's changing our residential neighborhoods into hotel motel zones, which is not fair to the residents. They shouldn't have to worry about who's next door to them every weekend, somebody different every weekend. That's not right. So I do think that's something that, as Tiger said, he and I have been working on. We are looking seriously at these businesses that control the short-term rentals. I think it's very promising, and I think by next summer we'll probably have something in place that's going to deal with this issue.
Many years. Jerry, this next question, I guess you start. Do you want to have a more robust nightlife in the village, and what businesses would contribute to it?
We definitely need more wet uses, and that's the whole reason that we need to upgrade the septic system. We need to have the outdoor dining. This board was totally against outdoor dining, and you know, we joke around on our team and say it took a pandemic to get outdoor dining, get this board to move on outdoor dining. So we need to have outdoor dining. We need more wet uses so we can have an ice cream parlor, we can have a cafe. Those are the things we need to have nightlife. We're not going to, as Barbara has put out to residents, we're not looking to make the inns nightclubs. We're not looking to have restaurants, as she put it, spill onto the sidewalks. This is never going to be Montauk. This is going to be a better version of Sag Harbor, in my vision.
Barbara?
Well, I think I'm not sure exactly how to respond to that. We are East Hampton. We're not Sag Harbor. We're not Montauk. We're a different community. I believe that I agree that we need more wet uses. We like the idea of having more wet uses. That's why one of the reasons we're looking into the septic water quality issues. And I think that's a healthy thing. I think we have to be careful because restaurants demand more parking and they do contribute to more lively activity at night. I don't think our residents want things going on all the time, every night, late at night in the village. I think it's a balance. I think we have to be very careful and find the right balance, which is something that I think we need to work on. I'm not saying I don't want it. I do. I think it's important because I think that restaurants are a healthy thing to have, but it affects the parking. It affects a lot of things. We'd have to change parking codes, for instance, in order to make that happen, as well as, the septic issue. So It's not a simple issue. It's a complicated issue, but I think it's something that we all want to work on.
Tiger?
Yeah, I think that, all of those of us that talk about things like wet uses, that's just a nerdy way of saying places that generate water flow. So that's restaurants, ice cream parlors, juice bars. I think Jerry's comment that, the reason we need wastewater treatment is so we can have more wet uses. I mean, that's kind of true, but not totally true. We need to protect our ponds and water. We have to protect the resources that we're husbanding for future generations. As far as more restaurants go, I'd love to see more restaurants in the village. I think as I said in my first piece when we were talking, in question number 1, I said that, the restaurants generate foot traffic. And when you leave a restaurant at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night, and you're walking down Main Street going back to your car, if the store is open, you might go in. You might find something you want to buy. I think that all of this is finding ways to create vitality in the village, not passivity. And Jerry's right. We'll never become Montauk. Okay. And as he says, a better version of Sag Harbor? No, not really, because we're not Sag Harbor either. We're East Hampton Village. We are effectively 2 streets, Newtown Lane and Main Street. And I would love to have more liveliness in the village, but we're not talking about nightclubs, and frankly, I don't even think bars. I think that we need to balance, if you don't manage change, okay, change is going to come at you and eat your lunch, okay? So that's why one of our campaign slogans is balanced progress. We want to move ahead, but we have to do it with balance, because this is a residential village with a small commercial core. And we're not talking about putting a restaurant on Cooper Lane. We're talking about putting restaurants on Main Street and Newtown Lane. We have to balance everything out, because the quiet enjoyment of the village by our residents is, after safety is job 1. So that's residents quiet is job 2. Resident safety is job 1.
Well, that sort of leads into the next question.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Recently, the village board passed legislation allowing retail food stores to have up to 16 seats in their location. And when they passed that law, I was at the hearing, or at the, I guess it would be a hearing, at the village board meeting. And I asked the question, because it was inside or outside. And I said, are we going to allow these establishments to seat on the brick area outside of the, on village property? And the answer was very clearly no. And that there was no intention of allowing that to happen. And my point to this whole thing is, if we really want vitality back, if they really want vitality back in the village, and why would you not allow outdoor seating on village property? And you can do it now without the septic system, because you can trade off the number of seats inside a restaurant and just move them outside, and you're not affecting the flow rate. So why is the village board so resistant to doing that and helping the nightlife and the vitality come back before the pandemic?
Jerry, unfortunately, Barbara, Jerry just enunciated my next question.
Okay. Because I'd like to respond to that if I could, because
let me just make it a little bit broader, or
okay,
pointed, I guess, and that is through COVID, we've actually experimented with outdoor dining, and I don't want to cut you off from answering Jerry's question, but what has been the reaction? I think it's relatively positive about having more outdoor dining on the village's property.
I think I just want to correct one thing, and that is that Jerry said, he was asking a question about a specific legislation that was happening right then, whether that was going to allow seating outside. And that particular legislation was not going to allow that. That did not address outdoor dining. That didn't mean we weren't interested in addressing outdoor dining. So I just want to clarify that fact. He was asking a very specific question about a specific legislation, and it had nothing to do with general outdoor dining. I don't have a problem with outdoor dining. I think it can be done, but I'm not sure. Again, it has to be done carefully. I don't think it can impede the actual pedestrian areas. I think we have to be very careful about ADA compliance and pedestrian areas. I think we had to, in order to get everything down close to the road, to get off of the pedestrian areas, we had to block off parking spaces. So there were some trade-offs, and that's something that would have to be discussed. I'm not at all opposed to places like Rowdy Hall, where they have plenty of space on their own property to doing outdoor dining, and as Chittenwover does outdoor dining now on their property. So again, it's a balance, and I'm not opposed to outdoor dining per se. I think that's something that can be discussed in the future for sure.
Tiger? Tiger, you're muted.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm muted? Oh, okay.
No, you're okay. I was muted.
Oh, okay. Wrong author. I'm sorry.
Muted, and then I muted myself. But there is equity on all sides of this, okay? Jerry has been a proponent of outdoor dining from March 2019, I guess. I had my doubts about it, frankly. Giving up village-owned sidewalk to private use is, is that fair to everybody else? But we did it this year. And frankly, I think it's been a big hit. I think it's a hit with the people that are sitting out there enjoying smelling exhaust smoke from cars, but it seems to be very popular. And I see no reason why we are not going to find a way to go ahead with this. It's not just going to be a blanket, okay, you're good, because that's not the way government works. We have to discuss all the sides of this. And when we come down with where we are, there will be outdoor dining in the village. But as Barbara says, we've had to move planters into parking spaces to keep the people at the table safe because they're right up against traffic. There's a lot of things we have to work for and resolve about this. But I don't think outdoor dining is going away anytime soon.
Can I say something? So it just begs the question, because Barbara, you've been on the board a long time, and people have come to the village board, in particular Babette's, asking to expand their outdoor dining onto the public sidewalk. And she's been denied at least twice, she told me. So why all of a sudden would you start thinking it's going to be okay? Is it because the pandemic has convinced you, or it's been 20 years? I just, it's again, I get frustrated by the dragging of the heels and nothing getting done. But again, this goes back to my whole campaign platform about term limits, because people get too comfortable and they don't have any ideas. Barbara, you want to?
Well, I'm so disappointed that you're frustrated, Jerry. That's very disappointing to me. I hate to see you frustrated.
It's not just me, Barbara.
Of course, the pandemic has certainly contributed to, looking at things differently. There's no question about that. But as I said, I wasn't opposed to it before. I was only one member of the board, and I couldn't, make decisions on my own. So, that was a different board.
Right, but you never brought it up.
You don't know that.
Proposed it. No, I'm asking you. No, I'm asking you. Did you propose it?
Of course, I discussed it with different board members over the years many times. That's not something that the other board members were interested in. So,
okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about accessory apartments and affordable housing and that type of thing. And for some of you who know her. Diana Weir has done a lot of this work in Southampton, and they just changed their rules about accessory apartments. The question is, should we allow more accessory apartments on existing one-family building lots and designate them for low-income housing for the elderly and local workers? I think, Barbara, you're the first person on this one.
Okay, I have been a proponent of workforce housing for a long time. I have 3 children that live in East Hampton. I know how difficult it is to live here and how much it costs them to live here. It's very expensive. It's a difficult place to live, and I know that we lose a lot of our young people because of it. It's a complicated issue. One of the reasons we like the idea of the water treatment facility is that it enables us to revert some of the upstairs in the commercial core. Some of those offices can be converted back to apartments, and we can put those in a workforce housing system. We've actually been in discussions with the town. Tiger's been working on that with me. Tiger, what's the name of the town's department? I'm sorry. The town department that deals with their own affordable housing. The housing department.
I think it's housing authority.
I think it's the housing authority. Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry, it was just escaping my mind. We've been working with them and talking to them about potential for them actually helping us with a workforce housing situation. I have a lot of my own ideas about places that would be great for that. I'm not opposed to what the town has done, which is where they've allowed a certain number of applications in each neighborhood for a mother-daughter apartment. I think it's an 800 square foot addition that can be put on for a mother or a father or parents or a child to live in. So there are a lot of ideas that have been out there and that we've been talking about. It's not an easy answer. There are no easy answers, but there are solutions out there, and it is something that I'm very interested in and passionate about.
Tiger?
Yeah, Barbara and I have been on a committee that has been studying housing. And there are several things that have come up. One is elder care. If, heaven forbid, I become infirm and I need someone to care for me, and my wife is not up to the task, I have to hire people to take care of me. And there have been several places where people have asked us for permission to build an apartment in the garage for these people, so they don't have to be in the house underfoot, but they can be on premises. And frankly, I'm very sympathetic to that. But the question that comes is, what happens when I no longer need the care? Is that then a legal apartment when my estate goes to sell the house? I've got a half acre. I could put a little apartment in my garage. I've got plenty of room for it. But what happens to it? And if it is on a half acre, do you want it necessarily to be, housing for people that you don't know? And, on a large estate, you could probably tuck a 3-bedroom house someplace where it would never be noticed. But on most of the smaller properties in the village, we've talked about this at the Planning and Zoning Board. What do we do about guest houses for, apartments where, perhaps the mother and father want to move into the apartment and rent the house for the summer? All of these things are, multidimensional. There are a lot of moving parts to this that are attractive on one level and unattractive on another. And how we deal with these apartments, Arthur, if you needed an aide at your house and I let you build an apartment in your garage, would you then, when you no longer need that aid, would you be willing to rip out that apartment that you put in at some expense? You know, a lot of people wouldn't want to do that. And I don't know that we want to create all of these sub-housing units. I mean, I'm sympathetic with it, and I'd like to find a way to get there. But certainly on lots of an acre or less, I just don't see how you could possibly do it.
Jerry?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Tiger on this one. I think the more dense areas that we have, we'd have to be very careful because you're going to be adding more vehicles, you know, to the neighborhoods, more disruption. So I think we have to be very careful with that. It could affect your quality of life quite a bit. So moving back to what Barbara was saying about the apartments above some of our stores on Main Street and Newtown, I almost think we've missed the chance to do that. I think the rents now on these stores are high, really high. And I think most of these stores, because the zoning code doesn't allow them to use their basements as offices, have turned the second floors into offices. So I think we've kind of missed our mark on that. So I don't think you're going to see second floor affordable housing or workforce housing. I have a plan that I've been talking to quite a few people about, and it's been getting some traction. And it's an area up behind the Villa on Railroad Avenue, behind the Villa Italian store. It's owned by the Benny Krupinski estate. And it used to be a lumberyard, Arthur, years ago when I was a kid, Frank B. Smith Lumberyard. And it's a big storage yard back there now. And what I would like to see is the village to buy that and make that a rent-controlled mom and pop stores on the first floor. And the second and third floors, we make that workforce housing where we can have young families move into those homes. And you make a 2-bedroom apartment so you can actually have some children in there. And you start bringing young families back to our village. Because other than the Minardi's and the Melendez's, you don't have many young families in this community that live in our village. So I think that would be a way for startup businesses to really make an inroad to the village. And if it's rent controlled, it'll always be affordable. And we won't have what we had happen on Main Street in Newtown.
Thank you.
And can I just make one note
Sure.
about that? And that is that there are ways to incentivize landlords to go back to rental apartments in the stores. We've talked about that, and there are some ways that we can take to have that happen. I'm not sure about, I mean, I would be interested in looking into what Jerry's talking about, but it is a very heavily dense area now there with Pleasant Lane and that area. So we'd have to think a lot about that. And again, we'd have to work through the town's housing authority to work on something like that. But the town is willing to work with us. So I'm not opposed to any ideas that people come up with. I think they're all worth talking about because, as I said, I am passionate about workforce housing in the village.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I am very afraid of the density. Jerry, how many apartments would you be talking about? For how many people?
I don't have that number, Tiger. We'd have to lay it all out. This is just a concept that we're talking about.
And the other thing is, I don't think that I would want to be part of the village being a landlord to anybody.
There's ways. You're already a landlord. You own the Seaspray cottages.
We could find a private company to partner with, perhaps, would be a better way to do that.
Exactly. All the details can be worked out, but this is the concept.
Yeah, and I would have to see more. The density is something that I'm very afraid of. And, then, for stores and apartments, it couldn't end up being that big a building with, you probably need 2 parking spaces per apartment and 2 parking places per store.
Right. But the nice part about it is it would connect to the long-term parking lot, which would also connect to Herrick Park, which would also just incorporate a much larger village. I think it's worth looking at. And like I said, it's been getting a lot of traction from people I've been talking with.
Well, we'll look at anything. I mean, I'm open to anything. There are a lot of people that are smarter than I am that come up with good ideas. and I'm not going to not listen to them because I think I know what's best.
I appreciate that compliment, Tiger.
Listen to everybody. I wasn't talking about you, Jerry. That's okay.
Well, Tiger, you're the next up, and I hate to do this to you, but would you support professional bow hunting to reduce the deer population and carbon dioxide traps or chemical pesticides to kill the ticks?
As far as the ticks go, there are, I don't know if they're carbon dioxide traps, but I know there are traps for ticks, and I would certainly support that. The only thing is they have to be in a place that, no one's pet's going to get into it. But yeah, I'm all for killing ticks. And as far as the bow hunting goes, we have a program in the village now with bow hunters that I am in support of.
Okay. Jerry?
Yes. Short answer is yes. I am in support of killing ticks and reducing the number of deer. However, I think we really need to work with the town on this, because even if we reduce our deer in the village, they're just going to keep coming. So I think we need to partner with the town, come up with a plan townwide, and which would help us all. So I'm in favor. I've talked to hundreds of village residents, and I have not found many people who are happy with the deer population in the village.
Yeah. Barbara?
Yes, as Tiger mentioned, we have worked with this group called Wind and Waves, and they work within the hunting laws, within the what is already in place in terms of the hunting law, and they have professional bow hunters. They're well vetted, and they work with homeowners who have large properties, as well as the village, to find large areas that they can work in. And we are very hopeful that that's going to have some effect. We have tried to work with the town and had hoped to work with the town in the past, but the town is very hesitant. So we decided that we need to take some measures ourselves. I'm not familiar with the deer traps that you're talking about. I'd have to know more about them. I'm not a big chemical person. I'm not crazy about chemicals, but I'd like to know more about that. And I don't want to make a comment about whether I'm in favor of it or not until I know more about it.
Okay. The next one is a question from one of the people who sent in questions. And it's a little different. It says, how do you intend to support the civic and cultural institutions that are the lifeblood of the East Hampton Village, Guildhall, LVIS, the Historical Society, the library? And how are you going to help them adapt to the demands of 21st century audiences? Which is a hard question, by the way. I got to tell you, this was not easy.
Who's up?
I hate to tell you, Jerry. I think it's you.
I'm ready.
Okay.
So, it's funny. I was just talking to some people about this, and my concept would be institutions like this that are in our village, the library, Guildhall, the synagogues, the churches. I would like to offer Herrick Park as a venue for their events. Authors Night. Last year's Authors Night from the library, which is a great event, wound up in Amagansett. Like, this is our library. We could offer a great venue in Herrick Park. So that's how I would help our local institutions. We would offer a venue for them to have a certain number of events. And again, the details need to be worked out. This is concepts. So that's how I would like to move forward with our institutions. I also, the Hampton's Film Festival, which does a great job, is trying to bring people out here in the fall to help our businesses. And, we don't do enough. We don't do anything to help the film festival. We need to work with them. We need to waive the parking restrictions. So we're not they're doing all this work and they're inviting people out to help our economy. And what are we doing? We're slapping them with $80 parking tickets. It's unfriendly. I'm going to change it immediately. And we're going to work with these venues to help our economy do better, especially in the off season. That's when we need the help. And I know the film festival has asked the board many times for help, and they've just looked the other way. And it's not right.
Barbara?
I agree. I would also add the churches to that list, and I think there are things we can do to help them. I've been to the, I don't know if Jerry's ever been to the book event in August that the library does, but I go every year, and I can tell you that Herrick Park could not handle it. It's huge, and the number of cars is tremendous. So that would not work at Herrick Park anyway, but I understand what he's saying in terms of making use of our space. I think I have no problem with using Herrick Park for certain things, but I think, again, we have to be careful because it's surrounded by residents, and I don't think we want to disturb the residential quality of that area any more than necessary. I think we have to be very careful about what we do, but there are other things we can do to help our cultural institutions. One of the things I thought about a short time ago, but have not raised yet because one of them was in the process of doing a building program, so it was the wrong time. I would like to waive fees, for instance, for building permits, which can be very pricey when some of these institutions are doing renovations, restorations, whatever. They cost a lot of money, and I think the village could certainly waive those fees to help them out because we want to support them as much as possible. I would love to. One of the things I've thought that I would like to do is form a committee of the cultural institution, the head, maybe the directors of the different cultural institutions, and some of the ministers of the church. There is a group, the ministers, the clericus, that could be participating as well, or the president of the clericus, or however they wanted to do it. A committee that could actually talk about ways that the village can help them, because we don't always know, what they need and what we can do to help, but we would certainly be open to listening to what their needs are and try to figure out what we can do to help them. I have no problem with that.
Tiger?
As the former president of the Historical Society, I can tell you that the village works very well with the Historical Society. The Historical Society holds events for our sister organizations, Guildhall, et cetera, on Mulford Farm. They do their clothesline art sale there. The Thomas Moran Trust, which I was chairman of when we were restoring it, or for part of the time we were restoring it, also works very well with the village and the garden club. I see no reason why we wouldn't allow Herrick Park to be used by any of these organizations, and as Barbara said, including the churches. I think sometimes all they have to do is ask. And, I think Barbara's idea of waiving the building permit fees really kind of works. I know how hard it is to fundraise for these organizations. And if you're doing a big project, the last thing in the world you want to do is worry about a $10,000 building permit. And I think that, for 501c3s and religious institutions, it's probably a good idea to waive that fee. Thanks.
I'd like to say something. Both of you are on the board. Barbara for a very long time, Tiger for a very short time, but still on the board. And Barbara just said something. She wants to set up a committee. I'm going to set up an office of business/tourism. And we are going to visit every business, including those institutions that we're talking about, and find out on a monthly basis what we can do better to help them. And what Tiger said, all they have to do is ask. We're a small community where everybody knows everybody. Why are we not offering? Why are we not going to Guildhall and sitting down with the executive director and saying, hey, listen, we would love to offer Herrick Park space. Why do we have to wait until they come and ask us? I don't follow this logic. I think we should be picking up the phone and asking people, how can we help you? And that's what my government's going to do.
I think, Jerry, it's very simple why we don't call them up and say, hey, do you want to use Herrick Park this weekend? There's nothing booked. they have their schedules, they have their calendars, they know what they're doing. If they feel that the space that they're using is not adequate for what they want to do, they will ask us and we will say yes.
When's the last time the library or Guildhall held an event in Herrick Park, Tiger?
Probably never. Okay, and
So
you know what, Jerry?
What are you saying?
Okay, so let me ask you, do they want to do one there? Or do you just assume?
I'm gonna find out, Tiger, because I'm gonna go visit them.
Okay, get elected first.
I just want to mention that the LVIS does make use of Herrick Park every year for their fair. It was too bad that the fair was canceled this year, but they do make use of Herrick Park for their fair.
No, I'm aware of the LVAS. They're a wonderful organization, and I worked very closely with them when I was chief of police.
Okay, one last question, and then we'll wrap things up. And that is, what would you do to improve parking in the core business district in the summer? And I've honestly lost track of who goes next. Barbara, you want to try?
I think, yes, we're very excited about the new parking system that we just agreed to purchase. It's a license plate reader system, which is not the same one that Jerry looked at a number of years ago. It's a different technology than what was looked at a few years ago. I know he's going to say that, so I just want to get that in so I don't have to rebut later. It's not the same system. It's a very much more sophisticated system. And it's going to give us a lot of flexibility. And I think we're going to be able to, what I'm excited about is we're going to be able to do some experimentation, because it's all computerized and it's easy to change. If we decide we're going to try, one lot is going to be 3 hours, one lot's going to be 2 hours, or we're going to do this section 3 hours and this section 2 hours or whatever, we can try and see how it works. If it doesn't work, we can go back to another way of doing it. I mean, we can keep experimenting until we find out what really works. And I think that's going to give us a lot of flexibility, and it's going to be a great system. I'm very excited about seeing it at work. Hopefully this fall, it's going to be up and running, and we're going to be able to test it out before next summer when it's, that's when the rubber hits the road. So.
Tiger?
Yeah, like Barbara, I am very excited about this new parking system, because one of the things it's going to tell us is what cars are where, when. And with this data, we can determine exactly where we need to have more parking and where parking is in demand at what times of the day and at what times of the day it's not. This system will cover Newtown Lane, Main Street, long-term lot, Ridgershan lot, Skank lot. It'll even go down and hit the beaches if we wanted to. We will have data where we can determine exactly what the needs are. And then when we know what the needs are, we can then determine the policy that meets those needs the best.
Jerry? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to.
I didn't want to cut you off. Tiger.
So early on in my campaign, and I've had this idea for a long time. In fact, I brought it to the village board when I was chief of police, and they had no interest in it. But I would like to change the parking on Newtown Lane to diagonal parking. Now, this is going to serve many purposes, because Arthur, I saw you roll your eyes, but if you think about Sag Harbor Main Street, it would be similar to that. It will increase the number of parking. It will remove the problem of eliminating parking spots for outdoor dining, because the cars will park diagonally and not parallel, where their car doors are opening and hitting the tables or whatever. So you would have diagonal parking. Again, this has all been vetted through a parking engineer that I hired on my own. I'm going to restripe the Skank parking lot, and I'm going to change the traffic flow in the Ridgershan lot, and I'm going to change the parking along the curb line from parallel to diagonal. In total, we pick up 73 more parking spots just by striping, as opposed to what the village board did a couple of years ago when they bought that house and knocked it down on Osborne Lane and spent $1.1 million of village taxpayers' money to create 20 parking spots. That's $55,000 a parking spot that no one uses, Arthur. No one. It is an empty lot. So That was a huge mistake, probably even against their own comprehensive plan by creating new parking, because the comprehensive plan says that we should not be doing that. We should be utilizing the parking we have and thinking of innovative ways to increase parking. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, I'd like to respond, if I may, to Jerry. I looked at the idea of diagonal parking on Newtown Lane, and in my experience, it's more like Southampton. The Main Street in Sag Harbor is much wider than Newtown Lane by about 40 feet. And what you would do by having diagonal, don't shake your head, Jerry. The parking, diagonal parking on Newtown Lane would reduce us to one northbound, one southbound lane of traffic, which is inadequate for the traffic that road serves. As we all know, when you go to Southampton and you're back out of one of those diagonal spots, you're wondering if you're going to get hit because you can't see past the car you're parked next to. At least in Sag Harbor, the street's wide enough that you can get out and somebody can get past you. It would be a disaster for traffic flow. It would be a disaster for people backing up into traffic, which as everyone backs out into the traffic to get out of the spot, it stops the traffic. I mean, it would be a disaster for traffic flow.
It's actually,
I don't know what your consultant told you, but you can go, I even have one of those little wheelie measurer things. I'll be happy to lend it to you, and you can measure Newtown Lane and then go up and measure Sag Harbor.
Tiger, I think what you're missing is there are some parts of Sag Harbor Main Street that are wider, but if you measure it at the movie theater, it's actually a couple of feet smaller or less wide than Newtown Lane. So take your little wheel and measure it again, because you're mistaken. And
No.
to rebut about people backing out of parking spots, most people out here are not very experienced drivers. They only drive in the summertime. It's actually easier to pull in and back out than it is to parallel park, which would also reduce the amount of people that are circling around in the Rudishan parking lot and the Skank parking lot looking for easy parking spots. This would be a simpler way. And to talk about traffic congestion, if you're driving down Newtown Lane, this is not a through street. If you're driving down Newtown Lane, you're coming to find parking. And that's what we're the shortest on, Tiger. We need more parking. If you talk to the store owners, that's what they're going to tell you. And after that, it's the time parking.
Okay, what I just like to, if I could just say a couple of words quickly. I agree. I do not like diagonal parking. I think it's unsafe. And as someone who drives a smaller car, it's very difficult to get in and out when you're diagonal parking. I don't like it, and I'm not in favor of that. And years ago, there actually was diagonal parking there, and it was changed so that they did have 2 lanes of traffic in either direction to move the traffic flow better on both Main Street and Newtown Lane. So I'm not in favor of that. That's just my two cents.
Okay, well, I think everybody has really spoken well and with a lot of passion, actually, about the future of the town. And if you would now take a minute apiece and summarize where you think you are and where we are. We started at the beginning with Barbara, so I guess, Jerry, could you start first? And
Sure, thanks, Arthur. In closing, I am running for mayor because when I started working for the police department in 1983, the entire village felt friendly, helpful, and family-like. Over the years, I've seen it become divisive, unfriendly to residents and business, and I want to change this. I want a village that is helpful and caring. I want a village that maintains the amenities it currently has and is willing to be progressive while respecting our historic character. I am the candidate with leadership experience and the candidate that is not afraid of hard work. I am a candidate that has the support of its residents, business, and employees. Thank you for your time, and I hope you'll support me on September 15th. Thank you, Arthur, and thank you, the GGG, for sponsoring this event. Thank you, Tiger and Barbara, for a very enjoyable night.
yeah, Barbara?
Oh, I thought I would have to go last since I went first.
Oh, no, if you want to go last, no, you've
No,
got
it's
it.
all right. Go
I am the
ahead.
most flexible
Go
guy
ahead.
in the room. Tiger, go ahead.
Okay.
Probably backwards.
Well, so the question really is, what's at stake in this election? When Rose Brown and I both ran the village board in 2018, we ran as the agents of needed change in village government, and we have proven this. Please give us the opportunity to continue on this path. When I'm mayor, every resident will have my cell phone number. I may not always answer it, but I'll always get back to you. Your mayor needs to be a proven leader, one who listens to the voices of the village board and the voices in the community, and has demonstrated the ability to move the ball forward. I aim to balance the progress of a vibrant commercial core with our peaceful neighborhoods. Your vote for me is a vote for yes. It's a vote for collaborative leadership. It's a vote for managed change that protects quality of life, but truly revitalizes this village. Vote for the Fishhooks Party. With my running mate for trustee, David Driscoll, and current trustee, Rose Brown, on the board with me, I know we can build a better future for East Hampton Village.
Okay, Barbara, you ducked once before. Now it's on you.
Well, I just want to say I am surprised that Jerry thinks that this village is somehow unfriendly and not as wonderful as it was in the 80s. I think it's still a wonderful place, and people spend a lot of money to live in this village. So I think the residents think it's a pretty wonderful place as well. Our residents are my first thought goes to the residents. I want to protect the residents because the village is 90% residential homes and neighborhoods, and we need to make sure that the residents are protected, that they have a good quality of life, that their health and safety is number one, and then noise issues and anything that affects the village residents in terms of enjoying their own property. That's what I'm concerned about. I think that we need a vital commercial core, but I also think that the residents have to decide what they want in the commercial core. So everything needs to be resident run. The residents have to let us know, and no one has ever had a problem getting in touch with me. My phone number is in the book. I get phone calls all the time. I don't have an unlisted number. I get people who stop me in the grocery store, in the post office, in the bank. They talk to me all the time. I hear from people all the time about issues that they're concerned about. So I'm very easy to get a hold of, and most of the residents know me very well. They've elected me 5 times for a reason. So I appreciate their support and look forward to serving them further.
Well, I really thank every one of you for making this thing successful. Doing stuff on Zoom is a new activity, certainly for all of us. And I hope the residents really take the opportunity, if they haven't heard it live, to click on either the GGG website or the LTV website and get a recording of this. And I know LTV will be showing it on probably channel 20 or 22, I'm not sure which, at several times during the upcoming weeks. And I want to thank, of course, LTV. I've done a lot of meetings on old-fashioned Zoom, and quite frankly, your technology and your experience and your professionalism has made this head and shoulders above stuff that we've done before, and I want to thank you for that. And thank you all, everyone, for joining us, and most importantly, don't forget to vote. Otherwise, this is all.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Goodbye.